Well, let's talk about this this first story, and we have this from CNN, of all outlets. I like using CNN when it's something like this. White House responds to Russia's decision to put deterrence forces on high alert. They say, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Sunday that Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to put Russia's deterrence forces, which include nuclear arms, on high alert, are part of a wider pattern of unprovoked escalation and manufactured threats from the Kremlin. This is really a pattern that we've seen from President Putin through the course of this conflict, which is manufacturing threats that don't exist in order to justify further aggression. And the global community and the American people should look at it through that prism, Psaki told ABC's George Stephanopoulos on This Week. Well, the news there is that in response to the sanctions, the escalation, and I guess what Putin says is aggressive language towards Russia, they've put all of their forces on high alert, which includes nuclear weapons. And then you had this guy on Russian TV who said, what's the point? Something like, what's the purpose of the world without Russia in it? And then said, we've got 500 nuclear submarines. We can launch these warheads and, you know, we could basically wipe out NATO and the U.S. I guess the question is, saber rattling, hyperbole, or should we all go hide in the basement?
There's absolutely going to be nukes dropped.
You think so?
Hassan Piker just said there wouldn't.
Oh, there we go.
My man's reversed
exactly.
Nostradamus. We're screwed.
Reverse
We're done for, guys.
I want to launch them on Mars. I think if you nuke the poles on Mars, doesn't that start an atmosphere or something?
You think Russia's going to do that?
You know what's funny
about
maybe we could work together, yeah.
What's funny
we'll
about that
take the
statement,
North Pole, they can take the South Pole.
It has like 1% of like relevance to the conversation.
I know, I'm just trying to make it better. I'm kind of
you are talking about nukes.
Save the world.
Wrong planet.
I hope there's no
right
nukes.
planet.
I mean, why would anyone do it? It seems like if you launched a nuke, that would be the end of everything.
No, I disagree.
The surface. You don't think the surface would just get fried after that?
U.S. did it. They got away with it. Drop a few cheeky
That was
nukes.
before anyone else had one.
That was before ICBM.
So look, the fear is mutually assured destruction, right? Not real. I don't believe in it. I don't think it's a real thing. So you guys ever see that movie with what was it, Matthew Broderick? No, War Games.
War Games, yeah, Matthew
yeah,
Broderick.
Matthew
it was.
Broderick.
And like
Yeah.
all the missiles are like flying in the air or whatever. And then there was G.I. Joe. You guys ever see the G.I. Joe?
No.
Where
Demi Moore?
the guy who looks like the Pope plays the villain.
What? No, I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
Is it a cartoon?
the guy from Game of Thrones who was the priest guy plays a villain, and then he's like, the U.S. fires their nukes, and then so then every other country is like, what are you doing? And they all fire the nukes, and they see all the nukes in the air, and then the Cobra guy masquerading as a president blows up the U.S. nukes, so then everyone else does. Mutually assured destruction makes no sense to me, right? Let me ask you a question, Lauren. Let me ask you a question. So a military officer comes to you and he says, Mrs. Southern, 17 nuclear warheads are headed towards the eastern seaboard. There is nothing we can do to stop them. But you can choose to kill 10 million civilians yourself. Would you do it? Would you be like, I guess I'll blow up a bunch of civilians?
You know, if I was a little more bitchy and spiteful, maybe, but you know, maybe no, not me.
Well,
It depends on how the Patreon lawsuits
Well,
come
but think
along.
about it.
yeah.
It would be like,
Which cities are we talking about? Do I get to pick and choose?
well, let's just say, you know, like Russia's fired a bunch of nukes at the eastern seaboard of the United States. Vancouver and Toronto included, I guess, because, you know, Canada. You can't stop it, but you can kill Russian civilians. Would you do it? I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I don't know.
people would
Here's
do
the thing. I don't know if she would, but someone would.
Yes, that's a
And
good point.
I think that threat exists in the mind of anyone who's considering launching nukes in the first place.
But you guys ever hear that story about the Russian submarine dude? They got a false alarm that a nuke
Yeah,
was
I did.
fired,
I did.
and he refused to fire.
Save the world.
I think that's more indicative of what a person would do. Like,
Well, there's been studies done on this too, with like just the amount of people in war that go out, whether it be Afghanistan or World War II, and they'll talk about how much they freeze. It's like the first time, it's almost like, I'm making this up on the spot, fake stats, but it was something I read said like 50% of the time they'll freeze and not be able to shoot someone the first time it happens to them.
we talked about this with someone with Vietnam. They were saying that the soldiers who were drafted would aim up and try not to hit people.
Yes, that's,
Actually, most soldiers, there was a study done called Men Under Fire, and they basically found that something like 2% of soldiers did 98% of the killing.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so the entire idea was our government wanted to figure out how you could get everyday average troops to be willing to fight, because most people in a combat situation, if someone is up on top of them or they have to kill them in a direct self-defense scenario, will do so. So in warfare, if the enemy are jumping into your trenches, yes, you'll shoot them more often than not. But if they're all the way across the battlefield and you're trying to snipe and pick them off, most soldiers won't pull the trigger. And our government kind of tried to figure out ways to encourage troops to do so.
Didn't video games help?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, there was a game called America's Army that was basically grooming people to become soldiers.
Not that so there's a misconception
That
that,
the government
I'm not
made-
saying
the
it
government
makes
made
you
the game.
it makes you more violent, but when you're desensitized to entering combat, what I was reading something where they said like playing video games helped people overcome their like resistance towards killing someone.
I think probably with drones and stuff, it's a lot easier the further and further like degrees apart. It's almost like the trolley question. Okay, would you pull the thing to kill one person or two people? All right, would you push someone in front of the train to stop the trolley? The closer you get to being the exact thing that kills the person, that's when all those mental blocks start. But when they're just green light on a screen, much easier to click a button.
My favorite trolley meme is the one where it's one track and it's just riddled with people, and it says you can stop the trolley at any time, but it would hurt corporate profits. That one's good.
By the way, it was Men Against Fire was the name of it.
Men Against Fire.
Yeah, yes. And I want to double check the numbers I threw out. I may have misremembered them, so go and look that up for yourself.
I got the name of this.
A shockingly low number of people are willing to actually engage in the combat.
The Russian submarine soldier, his name was Vasily Arkhipov, and it's during the height of the Cold War, Cuban Missile Crisis, and he got, I think there was a miscalculation. They thought the nukes had been fired. He got an order to fire, and he didn't do it. Basically prevented World War III. This one guy.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's like a hero, right?
Yeah.
They're like this guy. I don't think most people would do it. But would Vladimir Putin is a question, and I think Vladimir Putin would fire nukes.
If he was fired on, yeah.
No, I think he would. I think he would
voluntarily, yeah.
I think Vladimir Putin would launch nukes.
Really?
Well, they're not really sending. They're like people are giving the Ukrainians weapons, but no one's sending troops in. They're kind of just like, oh, we don't really want to get involved. We don't want to get in trouble. So
I don't know if they
the man might get away with it.
I saw a cartoon meme of the Ukraine guy, and the American guy was like, "You have my gun," and the other guy was like, "You have my." The Scandinavian guy was like, "You have my axe," and then the British guy was like, "You have my bow," and then it shows the Ukrainian guy, and he's just got an axe, a bow, and a sword. And he's like,
That's what I sent. Yeah.
Lord of the Rings meme.
Oh yeah, that's
yeah.
Also, I just want to pull something up real quick so I can add some clarity to what I was saying earlier. The best figures I have right now say that according to the study, it was fewer than 15 to 20% of soldiers fired their weapon in the first place, and then an even lower number actually killed people. So, but
with my
but I also want to say with my number, about 2% actually doing 98% of the killing. I'm not seeing that here.
I imagine most soldiers aren't in combat. I believe most soldiers are doing like logistics or back behind the scenes. Are you talking about just combat soldiers?
I believe. Well, I believe that the study is referring to combat soldiers because that's the reason they would. I mean, that's the entire reason they were doing the research.
Right.
Wow, Smackdown. That was Seamus giving me a nice.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't. No. You could actually. I could be completely wrong. I'm saying this is what I'm imagining.
You were
based
right,
on,
yeah.
So the question is, why is Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine? And if you can answer that, you can answer whether or not he's willing to use nukes more accurately. So there's the conspiracy theories. They maybe not even conspiracy theory is the right word, but there is the theory that Vladimir Putin opposes the Davos Group, World Economic Forum, liberal economic order, and all that stuff. And it's not an issue of NATO, which is proven by the fact that Estonia and Latvia are on the border with Russia as well, and they're NATO nations. The issue is that Ukraine is, joining the liberal economic order or whatever, and Putin's actually directly criticized this. I don't actually think that's the principal reason, though. If that was the reason, then you could argue, well, he's got to stop the globalists, so of course he'll use nukes, right? There are people posting this. There was
crazy.
A Ukrainian MP went on Fox News and said they're fighting for the New World Order. And
I saw that, yeah.
And so this is a lot of people saying, like, that proves it. I got a really simple solution for all of you guys. The U.S. and NATO have been screwing with Russian oil profits. It's like kind of that simple, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Russia care about profits as much as we think they do. Like, I think they've got, especially in the East, they have different values than we do in the West.
Yes.
In the sense they've got those blood and soil values more than we do. They've got the spiritual values. They genuinely believe like the Ukrainians are spiritually connected to Russia. I interviewed a guy named Michael Millerman, really interesting case. He's got a PhD on Alexander Dugin, who they've called Putin's brain.
Wait, is it PhD on Dugin?
It's in like Eurasianism or around that topic, but he studied and translated Alexander Dugin. That was like his focus of his work.
Yeah.
And he had 12 professors helping him out with the PhD. 11 of them quit because they said this is too dangerous. You shouldn't be allowed to study this topic. Wow. It's because he partakes in something called strategic empathy, where he really wants to understand the Russian perspective and like be able to empathize for the purpose of understanding. And everyone said, no, this is disgusting. How can you have such an illiberal worldview? And now he's getting calls from all over the world of people like, what is going on? Please explain Eurasianism to us. And he's...
Well, then, That's the issue then. If you know, we mentioned Ben Shapiro's tweet. He said Russia, you know, Putin wants to rebuild the empire.
Yes.
Sanctions aren't going to deter someone who's ideologically driven.
Right.
Totally.
If Putin is driven by ideology, I believe he can and will use nukes. I mean, well, maybe I shouldn't say will. He's capable of. He's what I mean to say is he's the kind of person who I believe has the capability and the willpower to put it. I'm not saying it's a good thing to press the button and say I will get what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, people are reasonable when they're driven by these temporal things of, you know, money, day to day. I just want to stay safe. But when you're at that higher level where it's like even something like revenge, or this is a spiritual battle, then you get people that'll blow themselves up in stadiums for it.
Yeah. But I think, you know, to elaborate on the profit motive thing, I'm not saying it's like Putin wants money and he's like, where's my money, my oil? It's more like getting resources for Russia.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, you know, what I see is, we mentioned it 50 billion times, you got the Qatar-Turkey pipeline, you've got the corrupt energy dealings Joe Biden was doing in Ukraine with well, I should say his son, and then his intervention with the government. And Putin's like, look, we support the Russian people selling oil to our customers in Europe. We charge what we can charge. The West doesn't like those prices, so they're playing dirty games like funding or providing resources to rebels in Syria, and then playing dirty games with Burisma. Joe Biden's on camera saying, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion. Turns out the prosecutor was investigating the founder of Burisma, where his son was on the board. Conflict of interest at the very least. Putin's like, you're screwing with my ability to generate resources for my country and my people. So that's less of an ideological and more of like a looking at, you know, a world leader thing. But I wonder if it is more ideological then.
Well, I know it's difficult to say. I can't read Putin's mind. I think there's an argument to be made that it isn't ideological, that it is more or less from Russia's standpoint a security issue, whereas from America's standpoint it's an ideological issue. So we see this as we would like for Ukraine to become a more liberalized nation, which is part of NATO, and which is part of the EU. And from Putin's perspective, it's as soon as they become a NATO country, the United States could put military bases there. And it's an entirely different set of concerns from I either want to make more money or I want to expand my nation.
Yeah, and this would be like the last point. If they do think that the U.S. are going to build troops up there and they do think NATO is going to join, then they're like, we have this short window that we have to invade and actually be successful. And it's got to be now. I want to ask you guys. Oh God, did I just forget the question I was going to ask you guys?
Forgot it.
Yep,
Remember.
it's gone.
It'll come back.
gone.
Don't
Flew away.
worry.
It's coming back.
I actually got a buzz in my ear, and the New World Order just said no.
Oh no, that's a real thing.
No,
Frequency.
so there was this video on Fox. Maybe I should pull it up actually, where this actually I don't know if anybody wrote about it. I'd have to find it on Twitter.
Cool. I just remembered my question,
Oh,
so you
perfect.
can do that. I didn't know this until recently, but in some polling, like 80 to 90% of people in Crimea wanted to go back and be a part of Russia. And I know people have said like, oh, the Russians specifically sent people to live there to try and make it a Russian majority and have that happen. But then they've got the same thing in Donetsk, where there are a lot of people that want to be a part of Russia. Do you think that they should be allowed to have some sort of vote, referendum, like Quebec did in Canada, to join Russia? Or is
Yes.
that a problem? Okay, I want to reasoning.
Self-determination.
But people are saying it's malicious, and Russia's specifically sending people there. So, like, let's look at open borders groups. If they specifically had a bunch of Mexicans go into California and then said, we want to have a referendum to see if California wants to be a part of Mexico, how would you feel about that?
Well put.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I
that's a
got to
good
be
point.
honest.
That's war. That's a type of war.
Exactly.
Tim would
It's
say
interesting.
California, they can have it.
Yeah,
That's what I said.
you picked a very interesting state there, Lauren.
Yeah.
Like, no, I gotta
Kinda
say,
like, oh,
here's
sure,
the thing.
whatever.
Even though the things California is known for are basically useless, they do produce what they're not known for is useful, which is producing food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of almonds too.
Yeah.
all
Well,
the coastal
here's the
territory,
question
too.
though. The issue with the Donbass region, Donetsk, Luhansk, what some people have told us, and again, I know it's fog of war, propaganda, it's hard to know what's true, is that it was Ukrainian, and then during the Soviet Union, Holodomor, Russification, the eastern regions became predominantly more ethnically Russian as opposed to Ukrainian. Now, 30 years on, all of a sudden, it's like, well, there's a lot of Russians speakers here. Guess Russia should take it. I guess the question is how far back do you want to go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is the what is the issue here with the eastern region of Ukraine? If it was the Soviet Union, if there was an empire, it collapsed. There are some questions about boundaries and borders and stuff. Sure. California's a little different. If California is allowing people to come in as non-citizens and then, you know, they have kids who then become citizens and within 18 or 20 years, they vote for secession, you've got a serious question about whether or not there was an intentional act to come in and take land away from the United States. That being said, there's still an important question of if they play by the rules, if they're working within the law, if these people are citizens and they vote to secede and join Mexico, do we respect the wishes of secession? And this country was founded on a bunch of people being like, we hereby vote, you know, we're not part of the, you know, the British Empire anymore. And Britain was like, nah, and they fought over it. So maybe that's what happens is like both sides will claim their right, and whoever has the ability to defend themselves or reconquer the land is.
You might say like they have like some ethical justification to say we're going to be part of Mexico now, but realistically, the U.S. government's not going to give up their west coast, all that water access.
That's why Tim brought warfare into it too. It would be a question of would Mexico be capable of going to war with the United States military? And the answer to that question is almost certainly no, unless there was an ally in another part of the world who wanted to send their troops in to help. So if China said, let's destabilize the region, and
you are wrong, sir.
Oh, I am wrong. Explain.
You got to understand, man, with what we're looking at in Russia, a bunch of regular people with guns, almost impossible to conquer.
Oh, that's true.
Air superiority does nothing for occupying territory. You can't occupy street corners with fighter jets.
Yeah. That's
artillery
true.
Vietnam and even Afghanistan now.
Exactly. Our artillery is not going to hold down. It's not going to force people to go to certain buildings or to not go near certain buildings. Certainly, you can blow the cities up. Okay, well, sure. But what's the goal there? So,
well,
if you're trying to conquer or maintain control of a land, blowing it up and wiping it off the map, it's kind of like we're losing it anyway. Let's blanket sweep and just wipe everything out and rebuild later, maybe. But you're not going to be able to control the people.
Here's why I'm still correct. Because
oh boy,
because you are correct. I mean, firstly, a defensive war is always easier and less expensive to fight than an invasion is. However, it would depend on what percentage of California wanted to be a part of Mexico and how many people there would actually be willing to fight alongside the United States government to maintain that territory as part of the U.S. I don't think it's just a question of the U.S. coming in and blowing things up.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's if there was enough sentiment in California for secession, and I actually think there might, like I said,
maybe
around a third to 40% of people in like each of the 5 regions of the U.S. are favor secession of their region. So the question is, how many people support secession, how many people oppose it, and how many people don't care? And if you look at like Democrats to Republicans in California, it's 2 to 1. It's like for every 2 Democrats is 1 Republican, and then independents are people who are more likely going to say, I don't care.
Yeah. So
I kind of think that if it was a Democrat secession, which is what people are actually talking about, and what the Podesta, what the Boston Globe story, they were war gaming out what happens after the 2020 election if Trump won. They were suggesting the West Coast secede. It's a left Democrat secession movement. Whether or not the United States can stop it from happening, I'm not entirely convinced they could. We can talk about, what did Putin say? Or I'm sorry, what did Biden say? If you want to go up against us, you need nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
and it's
that's not true.
Are you talking about bombing like civilian populations with nuclear bombs? Otherwise, you can't do anything.
Yeah, destroying a country is different than taking and conquering a country.
That's why propaganda is like the most important thing.
Well, and it's the entire reason they want to disarm people.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Isn't it amazing watching all of the lefties go full soy over the Ukrainians being armed?
Yeah.
You mean like in support of?
Yeah, look
in
at
support of. They're like, look at all these normal individuals, boss babe with her gun. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I love that. But why don't you want that for us? Because the Second Amendment isn't about, I want to go to the shooting range and have some fun. It's for if this happens.
I think this might be waking a lot of people up to that and realizing we need to be armed. All of us.
Look at our southern border.
We should have access to it.
Southern border's porous. What do we have, like 1 million encounters last year or more?
Oh, yeah. And it would be way more than what were counted. I was just down there and I was watching every day. I
She's
went
like,
out.
I counted 1 million. I
counted 1 million myself. No, I literally just drove to one random part on the other side of a country club in McAllen, Texas, stayed there one morning at 4 a.m., got out of my car, and there were traffickers walking by. And they're like, don't film us, don't film us. And I'm like, holy, you can just drive anywhere across the border and see people making a little journey.
Wow.
It's wild.
How can you what electric fence is? Can we do something like that's inhumane? And electric fence
so here was the issue: is there was a Texas country club. There was the wall, and then it just stopped. And there was a Texas country club. I guess they couldn't buy the land, so all of these human traffickers and gang members were just going through this country club on the side of McAllen, Texas.
And the country club didn't care.
I guess not, because they're they just go around 4 a.m. They say there's shift switches at that time with the border guards, and they're just kind of lazy and a little more lethargic, so they'll just go across at 4 a.m., go through the night.
Well, this is why mentality, culture, psychology is so important for a war effort. If the United States has a large quantity of people who don't care about their borders, and even the people employed to guard the borders don't care about the borders, then you ain't got a border.
Absolutely.
And then we got into talking about this because of the issue of the eastern region of Ukraine, where you have people voting to be annexed by Russia or to secede or whatever. In Crimea, that's basically how Russia gained control of it. They were like, oh, we had a referendum and everybody voted. There was a poll from several years ago, like well before the annexation, and it found that it was the most pro-Russia portion of Ukraine, that they basically were like, we're Russia, we're not Ukraine, but we're legally Ukraine. So I can believe that a lot of people there want to be part of Russia. I don't know if I believe the referendum was legit. You know what I mean? Like Putin comes in, he had tanks ready, and then it's just there. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.